I recently took a trip to the small village of Cholsey in South Oxfordshire. At first glance it's a fairly unassuming collection of residential streets, but beneath this exterior are several dark and unnerving accounts of paranormal activity. Good evening. My name's Edward King Thompson, and welcome to another video. I began my journey here on the village green, which is colloquially known as the 40. This translates in modern English to the Marshy Isle. The village was established on what was once an island in a marsh surrounding the River Thames. Between 591 and 597 AD, the King of Wessex was a man named Chol, and his family owned land in this area. It is thought that Cholsey literally means Chol's eye, referencing the island in the swamp and the centre of Chol's land. Near to this area, there once stood a row of thatched cottages which were demolished in the 1930s. According to residents, there was an active and noisy poltergeist in the attic of one of these houses. When the attic was investigated, a pair of glasses and a stack of old documents were discovered. Now, the family who lived in the property were unable to read, so the contents of the documents remain lost to history. However, when these items were removed, the activity ceased completely. It calls into question what those documents contained. Was it some unfinished business that a deceased person wanted the family to complete? It's a sobering thought that should we depart this life unexpectedly, we too may leave things unfinished. A book half read, a novel half finished, a video half filmed. Perhaps there was no connection between the noises in the attic and the items discovered there, but we will now never know to whom they belonged to, nor what value they held. I then made my way up Station Road towards the west end of Cholsey. An apparition of a man with prominent buckles on his shoes is said to have been sighted numerous times along this stretch of road. That's it. That's literally it. That's the story. I mean, the only thing that really makes this unusual are the shoe buckles. Other than that, this could just be a real person. I get the sense that there are more details to this tale that could have been lost somewhere. Buckles were standard wear from the mid-17th to 19th centuries, but if this is an old story, couldn't it date to this time as well? I'll assume that since this is mentioned as one of the ghosts of Cholsey, that it must have occurred after buckles were the height of fashion. It does make you wonder, who was this shoe-buckled man who is now only remembered in a fragmented snippet of a folktale? I approached Cholsey's west end. The railway line runs very close to this area. I was looking for a Grade 2 listed house called Broadlands. Its location is pinpointed on the Historic England listing, but it proved more difficult to locate on foot. Broadlands is one of the oldest houses in Cholsey and was reportedly haunted by the ghost of a young woman at one time. The Reverend Philip Parr, then the Vicar of Cholsey, exorcised the ghost and it has not returned since. I've managed to roughly date this event to the mid-20th century, as Philip Parr was also the vicar who conducted Dame Agatha Christie's funeral service in early 1976. Her grave is in the parish churchyard. I eventually located the house, which unsurprisingly is on private property. To respect the owners, I kept my distance. It is said that although the ghost has long since been exorcised, visitors to the house can still sense a presence here. I do have to wonder if this is a bit of a placebo effect because they're aware of the Broadlands haunted history before they even arrive at the property. After finding Broadlands, I made my way onto the bridleway and walked under the railway bridge. I was looking for the site of what is perhaps the most notorious haunting in Cholsey. In the early 20th century, a Miss Walters lived between the Elms and Bloom's cottage. The house has long since been demolished, but apparently some old barn buildings associated with the house still remain. She lived on her own and was disturbed by stones repeatedly being thrown at her door. For whatever reason, this is a notably common occurrence in poltergeist cases. The most famous example I can think of off the top of my head is the Borley Rectory, but the activity in Miss Walters' cottage didn't stop there. She later experienced furniture being thrown around her kitchen. As there was seemingly no way for an intruder to enter the property, she became convinced that someone was gaining access to the house by climbing down the chimney. As the activity escalated, a farm labourer was called to keep watch for the culprit. He didn't see anyone, but heard those stones being thrown at the door and Miss Walter's screams. The kitchen was completely ransacked again, but the labourer could confirm that nobody had come or gone from the property. This unseen force reportedly visited Miss Walters at odd times for several years until her eventual death. A line from the Les Mis song, "I dreamed a dream," springs to mind. There are storms we cannot weather. After walking along the bridleway, I eventually located Bloom's cottage, but couldn't see any sign of the elms. I spotted a series of old barns and Wondered if they could have been the same ones mentioned in the story. Now, there are some old 18th century barns ahead of me, which belong to the Amwell Springs Brewery now. I'm not going to get any closer because I think it's private property, and I'd rather not get lifted by the police. However, I think we've actually stepped too far outside of the area between Bloom's Cottage and the Elms, so I'm not sure if these are the barns that are talked about that remain from the old knocked down house. I made my way back along the bridleway and realised I had missed the Elms entirely and walked straight past it. So I just travelled back up the bridleway that way and found the Elms, which means that the area where this haunted cottage would probably have been somewhere beyond those trees just there. Interestingly, there's a new build estate just over to my left here, which I'll try and get some footage of, but all the houses there are designed like barns, and I sort of wonder whether they could have been built on the site of these former barns of the haunted cottage. Now, obviously, if you didn't read that online article, you'd have had no idea that there was a cottage here which had reports of poltergeist activity at one point in history. And I think it just speaks to the importance of passing down these folkloric tales and legends to try and preserve them, because they just add so much colour and character to the landscape that would otherwise be lost. I'm now just making my way back down Station Road, because I think I'm going to grab a drink before we head off to our final location today. It is only mid-April, but it is absolutely roasting, even though it's also a very windy day, as you can see from my awful split-parting windswept hair. But yeah, it's absolutely roasting. Okay, we've solved that problem, so now let's head to Scilly Bridge. Scilly Bridge is located about a kilometre along a farm track and was designed by renowned railway engineer Isambard Kingdom Brunel. It was first opened in 1840, and there are several proposed reasons for its name. One suggestion is that the building of the railway cut off access between the villagers and their livestock on the other side. They complained to Brunel about this, who had the bridge constructed. Shortly afterwards, however, the Enclosures Act came into effect. As the land was privately owned, now there was nobody who could access the bridge except this farmer, so it became a bridge to nowhere. We're just arriving here at Scilly Bridge. It's very, very, very quiet here. Nothing passing on the railway at the moment either. Now, the story goes that in the mid-1980s, on a cold December night, a man was walking his dog along this bridge. When he got halfway across, he heard the sounds and felt the vibrations of a steam train passing beneath the bridge. But whenever he looked over the top of the bridge and down onto the tracks, there was simply nothing there. Now, today the bridge is surrounded by quite high walls, which I believe were constructed to stop people from the nearby mental asylum that was once here from jumping off, and that may be the unfortunate origin of the term Scilly Bridge. I'm going to assume that the walls here weren't as high as this in the 1980s, and that is how the dog walker was able to see over onto the track below. Cholsey, like so many of the UK's small villages, appears sleepy and unassuming on the surface, but beneath the layers of time lie dark secrets and stories of events which lie beyond our understanding of reality, even to this very day. I think it's important for us to seek out and tell these local stories. they contain subtleties about the lives of everyday people in the past, which the broad strokes of history don't even come close to touching. If you enjoyed this, you might also like this video, and check out my channel for more videos about dark history, folklore, and the paranormal. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.